Final Fantasy XIV 7.2. My opinion actually looks kind of good, but it's not without its faults, it's not without its concerns, and you all are not without your own takes and hot takes. Hello everybody, I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and we have a special episode of Hot Takes for Final Fantasy XIV today. I asked you all and I picked 3 hot takes, or just takes overall concerning 7.2. Let's just dive right on into it. Remember, this is all for fun. Let's get reacting. Alright, let's just rip this band-aid off. We have at Jake Liu, who says they have to somehow kill Wuk Lamat in-game and rewrite a better story to make people come back. Look, I understand Wuk Lamat is not the most, let's say, well-beloved character of all time. She is probably my least favorite character in the entire game as well. And even that is pretty generous for me. I don't like the character. However, I am not of the opinion that she has to die or something to bring people back. Could it work? I do think it's possible. And while I was playing through Dawntrail itself, there was a part of me that thought, what if they killed Wuk Lamat and then had everyone else model their future behavior on her principles or something, and like guide them all in a better direction? I thought that would have been an interesting way to take that character. I don't think that's what they're going to do, and to reinvigorate interest in the story overall, I don't think you necessarily have to kill Wuk Lamat either. I think it's an extremely simple thing that they have to do, and that's just write a really good story. And I know that sounds like duh, but it kind of is the case. I don't think we'll see much of Wuk Lamat past 7.3 because we have this 7.1 to 7.3 window where we are wrapping up the Dawntrail story. After that, as we move closer to 8.0, I think she'll probably take a more backseat role, and I've been talking about this since Dawntrail launched. She'll probably take a role similar to Amerik, where during Heavensward, yeah, he's in your face a bunch. I actually like that character. But when that story concludes and we move on to somewhere else, they're relegated to that region we just finished up with, and we move on. And if we happen to come back to that place for whatever reason, sure, we may say hi and how are ya, but they probably won't be a main feature important character in the MSQ going forward, and I think that's what's going to happen here. Kind of like what happened to Lise. I don't think she'll just give up her duties or make up some lame excuse to join the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, even though we technically disbanded to start, adventuring with us or anything like that. I just don't think that's what's going to happen, because that's not the formula Final Fantasy XIV has had up to now when it comes to expansion-specific characters. And I think as more content for Dawntrail comes online, and if that content manages to stick the landing and to be good, and if storytelling and story quality overall continue to get better, which I thought it did to some degree with 7.1, not perfectly anything like that. That entire train section was borderline sleep-inducing for me. But the stuff with Fiend, I'm all on board for. If the story can continue to be good and interesting in that regard, and to get even better, and if 8.0 comes out and is a banger, remember, Shadowbringers followed up Stormblood, and Stormblood is a polarizing expansion. I quite enjoy it, personally, but there are plenty of others who found it dull or tedious, or just didn't land for them. And then Shadowbringers comes out and is universally praised as one of the best RPG experiences ever, which I agree with. So it's not like storytelling quality overall can't change on a dime when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV or anything. And while I understand why a lot of people are vocal and pessimistic about Final Fantasy XIV right now, I am not one of those people that think the game is ruined or anything like that. I think it can easily get better in the future. They just have to show it. If they're able to stick that landing, right? They're able to really knock it out of the proverbial park, then we're good. We're rolling in mustard. On a grill, sizzling, dude. I think the most important thing for them to do is what I've been talking about for a while now. You have to nail the 8.0 story, and also get this content online and available to players earlier in the expansion cycle, not waiting for 8 to 10 to 12 months for key advertised pieces of content for the expansion to come online. Have that stuff release on the .0 patch or the .05 patch, .1 at the latest. You can have some stuff come online later in the expansion cycle, but things like field exploration or like cosmic exploration, that kind of content needs to come online way sooner for people. That is the stuff that breeds excitement. It's the stuff that fleshes out the end game and gives people varied things to do that maybe makes them want to just play the game more and then engage with other pieces of content. A key element to an MMO experience is how varied the actual end game is, because that's where people will likely spend the bulk of their time. So if 8.0 can come out swinging with a really good story, they don't have to kill Wuk Lamat or anything like that. They just have to tell a really good story and get this content online earlier. And I think the state of the game will be in a far more healthy position if they're able to do that. Will it be perfect? Absolutely not. And we can provide constructive feedback when and where appropriate. But like, that's the thing I think they need to fix and address the most. I just don't see Wuk Lamat being a character that sticks around for the longest time ever. I think they can write better characters. I quite like the character as Fiend. I know not everyone likes her, but still. Chances are there's at least one character in Dawntrail you probably liked. I loved Otis myself, underutilized in my opinion. Don't know why they didn't just call him Steiner, but I liked him. And now we're moving on to one that will be quite controversial, but I eat that kind of stuff up. And let's go in with Robin the Hood, who says they should make dual classing a permanent addition. Give me a way to customize my skill bar. I don't care if it's min-maxed. Make fun abilities that let me play a class multiple ways rather than relying on infrequent class rebalance in quotations to quote-unquote spice up combat. I don't think they have to do this. But personally speaking, I don't like the excuse that some people give in response to why they shouldn't do this. If they don't do it, that's fine. I think the most important element they need to address, especially with 8.0, ideally sooner, but does anyone actually think it'll happen sooner? They need to make jobs more fun, engaging, and varied. That's one of the elements, alongside what I was just talking about in the previous take, that they need to really remedy and take a hard, good look at, in my opinion. Yoshi P specifically talked about addressing job design in 8.0. That's still a while away, and it's kind of like the Final Fantasy XIV thing, where it's like, hey, this big change we really want to address soon, let's wait a couple of years. But Final Fantasy XIV has had good job design in the past. It doesn't need talent trees. It doesn't need a whole bunch of these typical RPG elements to have fun and interesting combat. Having said that, maybe this next take will be a bit controversial, but I cannot tell you, I cannot put it into words enough how I do not care about how the upper 0.0001% of the player base will optimize whatever skill tree or variance the game implements into the game to determine what Abyss is. I don't care about that element. What I do care about is making the game actually fun. Because I will also say, people will go by what the Abyss is. Best in slot. They will go by what the best is. People will do the math. They will figure it out. It'll be online. It'll be readily available. How do I know this? Because I also play World of Warcraft. This is an MMORPG. You know how many giant nerds there are in both of these communities that will sink their teeth into those numbers and figure out what is the best situation or combination you can possibly throw at anything in this game? They will figure it out. But I will say something. Even though, no matter what you do in regards to class variance, there will be a categorical best in slot in almost any way. A certain kind of build may be good for one piece of content, whereas another piece of content may require a different build. But there's also differences just in terms of how Final Fantasy XIV plays. But I will also say, wasn't Bosnia really fun with being able to pick those different loadouts and those different abilities? And yeah, they were broken and busted within Bosnia, but the idea was good, wasn't it? It was nice to have a bit of flavor to prepare for a fight and to feel like I equipped myself to the best of my abilities for this specific fight, and I can reward myself based on improved performance because of that time and effort I put in prior to the fight. I think there's an element to an RPG that Final Fantasy XIV just for some reason has really leaned away from. And it leaned away from it in the name of balance, because if there is no variance, you can just balance the few things that are available, and that is just the jobs themselves. However, I think this recent Ultimate has also shown the ability to balance everything leaves a bit to be desired, even in the best scenarios. We saw that with Pictomancer's domination with the recent Ultimate. I mean, it didn't help that that fight was pretty much designed entirely around Pictomancer, but besides that, my point would be, well, if we're not going to have perfect balance that allows me to play anything or whatever combination in any piece of content, I say allow, but you would still be able to, it would just be way harder, right? Like, if we're not going to have perfect balance anyway, then I don't want to hear the argument that having RPG elements, which is a core feature to Final Fantasy as a series anyways, which is something we kind of forget now and then, I don't want to hear how that will ruin the balancing when the balance isn't great that much nowadays anyways. That's not to say balance in this game is terrible or anything like that, but I think it's a spectrum between full-blown RPG customization and balance, because the more and more options you give, chances are there will be a combination of those options that is just categorically better, at least in a certain type of content than something else. And yes, by having less ways to play and less ways to interface with the game, it should be, theoretically speaking, easier to balance all that. But on the road to ever better balance, that is the same road as homogenization, because the less options that are available for differing styles of play, if that leads to better balance, as you continue down that road and to that extreme, you just wind up with homogenized classes / jobs, and you lose flavor, you lose spice in the combat. It becomes just unseasoned chicken breast that you boiled in some water for a while and called it a GG. It's boring, stale, and one-dimensional, dry without flavor. It's not a fun experience. So either side of that spectrum is not desirable, but I think you should be somewhere in the middle. And if you want to, like, lean to one side more than the other, sure. I don't think Final Fantasy XIV will, or ever should, be as customizable or in-depth like, say, World of Warcraft. It's just a different style of game. But also, Final Fantasy XIV used to have customization to some degree, and it still kinda does with the materia system. It's just stats in this game are like the most boring thing in human existence. Do I want a 2.5 GCD or a 2.49 GCD? You know what I mean? And while I don't know if dual classing is the direction they should go specifically, I can understand the appeal because it looks, or at least sounds, really cool when it comes to the Occult Crescent, that new field exploration content that's coming in 7.2x. That looks really cool and can hopefully breathe some life and spice and variety into job design that many people feel is stagnant and stale. You don't have to go, like, overboard with customization. Sometimes just having a little bit, something that at least gives me the illusion of choice, can be satisfying and add to the game. And I don't think it's something that Final Fantasy XIV should wholly discount in the name of perfect balance. For our final take of the video, we have at Justin Bowman 1342, who says, if done right, it will be a much needed shot in the arm for the game. Talking about 7.2 here. I got high hopes. I got high hopes for a living. For the raid tier, MSQ was left on an interesting cliffhanger, and if done right, the relic weapon grind will keep people engaged for more than a week or two. And yeah, this is an optimistic spin or twist on 7.2, but I do agree. I think 7.2, despite the fact quite a bit of this content probably won't come out till 7.25, and that's a whole other discussion that we've talked about before, like earlier this week on this channel, in regards to the monthly sub, when this content is finally online and in the game, if it's good, it should be the shot in the arm the game needs. At least for the short term, because that's what shot in the arm means. And in the long term, iterate on these ideas, work on them, improve, and then get this content online earlier in 8.x. And I think we're in the money and we're cooking there. I am not of the opinion that Final Fantasy XIV needs to throw everything out the window and just start again. I don't think a new game or anything like that will address the issues that Final Fantasy XIV has. And I don't think Final Fantasy XIV is necessarily that far off from being a great great game. It's just a few design philosophies that I think need to be course corrected. A few elements to the development cycle need to be addressed to get this content online earlier in the expansion life cycle. Story direction just needs to be a bit tinkered and to move away drastically, in my opinion, from the direction and style it has with Dawntrail. If it does that, it can recapture that glow that the game once had, that universal praise the game also once really had. It just needs to be a great version of itself again. And I think what I said before Dawntrail came out can still hold water. I talked about the endgame loop of Dawntrail possibly being the best Final Fantasy XIV has ever had because of the sheer amount of content that was on offer there and was being advertised for Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail. Field exploration, cosmic exploration, a new deep dungeon, more variant dungeons. Beastmaster, yeah, limited job, but still, that's good. But also, that'll probably come out like 7.55 or something, who knows. But if like all this content is good, then that's a really good amount of content on offer. It's just not online yet. They need to stick the landing. They've been doing really well in regards to actual fight design this expansion, in my opinion. It's been by far and away the biggest highlight. The arcade was super fun. The trials are super cool and interesting. I think the MSQ is getting better. That doesn't mean it's great right now, but I think it's on the right track. Relic Grind, hopefully, is somewhat fun and interesting. Thank God it's no longer tied to Hildebrand. I think it'll be a slow and steady upward climb for Dawntrail until we get to 8.0, and then they need to knock it out of the park. And if they do that, people at large have recency bias and a short-term memory. If you provide them a really good game, they'll forgive you. If you show them something really cool and interesting, a lot of people at large will forgive you and move on because they want to be excited. You just have to give them a reason to be excited. And I think Final Fantasy XIV can still do that. And with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Leave a comment down below with your own take, hot or cold, in regards to 7.2 for Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail and beyond. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I may react to them in a future video, so keep your eye out. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games, dream big, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody, until we meet again!